Alright, so today we're going to use some problem solving strategies. We're going to diagram our problems, our word problems. And we're going to model fractions in order to solve our problems. Okay? So, before we get started, we are going to spend a lot of time practicing this stuff because we really did not so good job on it when we tried to test this. It says we're going to multiply two mixed numbers. Jamal is making a blanket. It measures 6.5 feet by 3 1/4 feet. What is the area of the blanket? First of all, what is the formula to find area of a rectangle? What's the formula to find the area of a rectangle? Length times width equals area. So, we have the length times the width equals. Now, what can we not do? What can we not do, Ella? We cannot multiply mixed numbers. So how are we going to fix this? How do we fix it? Lucas.
Change it into an improper fraction.
Change it into an improper fraction. So, I'm going to start with 6 1/2. So I multiply by the denominator, and then I add the numerator. Okay? So 6 times 2 is?
13.
Plus 1.
14.
What's 6 times 2?
12.
Okay, so it's not 13? So 6 times 2 is 12. Plus 1 is? 13. Please don't skip ahead, then you confuse people in class. So, the denominator stays the same. Then we have to do the next one. 3 times m plus. So 3 times 4 is? Plus 1 is? 13 over 4. Now, my denominators are easy to multiply. 2 times 4 is?
8.
But my numerators, on the other hand, are kind of big, right? So let's make sure we take the time to work them out separately. 13 times 13. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 1 is 3. Placeholder. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. We add that together. It is 169. So we have 169 over 8. Now we have to change it back into an improper mixed number. So we have 169 over 8. Or 169 divided by 8. 8 goes into 16 2 times. Bring down our 9. 8 goes into 9 1 time. We have a remainder of 1. Our remainder goes over the 8. So we have our whole number up here and our fraction here. So we have 21 1/8. 21 and an 8. Okay? So there's our answer. So the area of the blanket is 21 1/8 feet. Okay? That's our review. So let's say it again. What can we not multiply?
Mixed numbers.
So when we need to multiply mixed numbers, what's the first thing we need to do to the mixed numbers?
Just improper fractions.
Change them to improper fractions. Okay. Now, Jaheem went to the aquarium over the weekend. He saw 35 species of fish. This was 1/5 of the total number of species of fish. How many total species of fish are at the aquarium? So, we're going to work on solving word problems. In order to do that, we have to go through the word problems and determine what we know, what we need to know, and then come up with a plan on how to do it. Okay? So, our first part is what facts do we know? We know that Jaheem saw 35 species of fish. And we know that this is how much of the total amount? 1/5. Okay? 1/5 of the total amount of species. Now, what do we need to find? Well, that's usually the last sentence of our word problem, and it says how many total species of fish are at the aquarium. So we need to know the total number of species of fish in the aquarium. Okay? Okay, now we're going to plan. I'll tell you, the majority of the problems that you're going to work with are going to have a fraction. So in this case, we have a fraction. What's our fraction?
1/5.
So what we want to do is model that fraction. So you can see down here, they have modeled 1/5. So they have a fraction cube that is separated into how many pieces? 5. So that means that this represents 35 times what? 5. Or we could just fill in 35 in each square and you could add them. Okay? So every piece of this 1/5 is equal to 35. So we have 35 times 5. But we're not there yet. So to solve this, to solve how Jaheem visited the aquarium over the weekend and saw 35 species of fish, this was 1/5 of the total species of fish. How many total species of fish are at the aquarium? Well, to solve it, the model is divided into fifths. Since each part represents 35 species, there is a total of 35 times 5, or 175 species of fish at the aquarium. Okay? Now all that's left to do is check to see if our answer is reasonable. So we take 175, we divide it by 5, and it says that we get 135. Now, can you guys divide big numbers like this in linear equations?
Yeah.
You can. Really? I can't. That's why I just did 13 times 13 over each other. You remember just seeing that? So if I was going to divide this, I would have rewrote it to where it was 175 divided by 5. So I can say 5 goes into 17 3 times. That's 15. 2, I bring down the 5. And 5 goes into 25 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Now I have a remainder of 0. So now, see, I understand that. The linear equation, I look at it and sometimes I go, because those are big numbers. What's that? Oh. No, this is the linear equation. So when you're checking, when you're using big numbers, let's make sure we show our work. Okay? Good? All right. So now let's practice a little bit. Okay? We're going to talk about Victor. Victor's rich. Victor has $18. Go ahead. Victor takes his $18 and he spends 2/3 of it on a video game. And then he spends 1/6 of it on a candy. I want to know what kind of video game he bought. Because I'm pretty sure my kids' video games are like $40 a piece. Nintendo game?
Yeah.
Alright. So, we'll have to figure that out. That way we can play some inexpensive games together. Alright? So, and then what they want to know is how much money Victor's going to have left. So, we need to know what are the facts that we know. We know that Victor has $18. Right? We know that Victor spent two-thirds on a game. I apologize that my writing is so ugly. And we know that he spent 1/6 on candy. Okay? So that's what we know, right? What do we need to find out? How much is left? Okay. Now I told you for all of these problems, the fractions, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with the fractions? No, that's what we're multiplying. We have to change a mixed number to an improper. What are we going to do with the fractions in our problems? No. You guys are confusing multiplying mixed numbers and everything with our fractions. Let me ask you again. What are we going to do with the fractions? What are we going to do with the fractions? What are we going to do with our fractions? What are... This is multiplying fractions right here?
Yep.
Really? We're modeling them. I told you we are going to model the fractions that are in our problem. How many fractions are in our problem? So how many models are we going to make? So our first model is going to be what?
2/3.
So we have to model the 2/3. What's our total? What's our total that he has?
35.
No.
2/3.
What's our total?
$18.
$18 represents our whole, right? So we have a model, a fraction model that is going to separate our 18 into thirds. So what goes into each square? How many of those squares represent 2/3? How many of the squares represent two of them? So that total is what?
12.
Now I have another fraction I need to model. What is it?
1/6.
Now, has my whole number changed? Does my whole piece change? No, so what's my whole piece? What is the whole that we are dealing with?
18.
18. So now I have 6 pieces to separate my 18 into. What am I going to make it?
3.
3 in each place, right? And how many of these pieces am I going to use for my problem?
1.
1 piece. So what is this? 3. So, I know that the 2/6 that he spent on the game was 12, and I know that the 1/3. So our plan is to model then add. So I'm going to add these together, and then what am I going to do with them? Subtract it from what? All right. So then we'll subtract our total. Oh, I just misspelled subtract. See? Subtract from total. All right. So far, so good? All right. So that's our plan. We're going to model, then add, subtract from our total. Okay? I know I didn't write complete sentences and stuff, but that's okay. So now we're going to solve it. So we took our model. So our 2/3, let's figure out what we have. 2/3 was what? 2/3 equals 12, right? And our 1/6 equals 3. So we're going to add 12 plus 3 equals. Then we're going to subtract 18 minus 15 equals. So how much money does he have left? Okay. So far, so good? You try to do this all at once, it's very complicated. If you do each individual step, the steps are easy. But if you look at it and say, oh, and you write it out like this, you can't do that. No, because you have to solve what these are, okay? So this is bad. That's the kind of stuff that gets people in trouble with math. Figure out what 2/3 is. Then figure out what 1/6 is. Then start doing this. So look, we have 4 steps. Okay? So do your steps. So check. We're going to check if our answer is reasonable. So, we said we have a total of 18, right? We ended up with 3. We can add that to what was 2/3 of the 18? 2/3 of the $18 was 12. 1/6 was 3 plus 12 is plus 3 is. So, is that reasonable? Yes, it is. Good job. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to work on number 1 on your own, and then I will show you how I want you to do it, and we'll move on. Okay? Okay, so Mrs. Valles purchased sand toys that were originally $20. She received a quarter off or 1/4 off of the total price. How much did she save? So we're modeling the fractions. So what do we have to model? 1/4. So if I'm modeling fractions, I need to draw a fraction rectangle that's separated into how many pieces?
How much the fraction is? 20.
4, because that's what the denominator is, right? So I'm looking at 1/4 right here. What am I separating? What's the whole? 20. So how much goes into each box? 5. So how much money did she save? $5. So Mrs. Valles saved $5. Now we want to know if this is correct. So what we have to do is 5 times 4 equals 20.
I did a weird way. Yeah, Drew did it like awkwardly. I did like, so I just used like the numbers in the question to find the answer. So this one's the whole number was 20, right? Then there was a 1/4 and then just said 5 times 4 equals 20.
Okay. I want you to model it. So I need to see your model. Okay, Mrs. Valles saved $5. So number 2. Sue has 4 DVDs, Terry has 6 DVDs. They put all their DVDs together and sold them for $10 for 2 DVDs. How much money will they earn if they sell all their DVDs? So let's take a look at what we know. Sue has how many DVDs?
4.
Terry has how many?
6.
Right here it says they put all their DVDs together, right? So if they put all their DVDs together, that means we have to add these. Now, what does that say?
2.
$10 for 2. Okay? So if it's $10 for 2, we need to see how many times we can make 2 with 10.
5 times.
So, we're going to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So, you guys told me already, how many times did I make 2?
5.
And how much, every one of those 5 times, how much money do I make?
10.
So how much money can they make?
50.
$50.
I did it different, and I still got 50. So nice.
Terry and Sue make $50. We have to check it. 50. $50 divided by 10. 50 divided by 5 equals 10, which is 10 is how many DVDs we started with. Okay? And X, how did you do it?
I added 4 plus 6.
Okay.
And then
Then you divided by 2,
yeah.
which gave you
5, and then
which is what we got with our model. Okay, but we said that we want to model it, right? So if you can model it, we want you to model it. So all I did was model the division. You actually just did the division. Same thing. Okay? So far, so good? Does that help? Okay, you have quite a bit of time to finish up. In just a minute, I will be calling you up to ask you to show me whatever you're missing. Not right now. Everybody should be working. I should see pencils moving. People should not be turning around talking to people behind them. Nobody should be digging through their bags.